Namaskar and hello. In this lesson, we will expand your knowledge of functions by learning about the Args and kwargs parameters. Say you are trying to create a function with a currently unknown number of parameters. How does one accomplish this? Well, this is done using the Args parameter, which is indicated by a single asterisk, also known as a star, prior to the variable name. So for example, we will create a function called showNames, which will take in an args special input parameter, for which it will iterate for element in args. And notice how we don't have to put in the asterisk when calling our args within the function. And we'll simply print out the value. Input element is, and then simply element. So this tells the user who is calling the function that they can input as many arguments as they want, right? So if we want to call our showNames, we will simply put in as many parameters as we want. And we're not specifying what the data type is of the parameter, so I can really put in whatever I desire in this particular case, since we're just printing it out, right? So here I'm just putting in a bunch of different parameters, and when I run it, notice it simply tells me everything that is inside. Notice that the parameter name args does not have to be actually args. It simply has to have an asterisk in front of it to indicate that it is of this special data type, right? So if we change this to something like var, and we of course change the corresponding parameters within the function, and we run it, exact same thing happens, nothing has changed. It's simply a naming convention. But for proper nomenclature in Python, you do want to keep it as args, like that. Okay, but what if we want to use some known parameters within our function? Well, no problem. Simply include them before the args parameter. As such, we'll do param1 and param2, for which we will assume there are some sort of numerical value when inputting, and we will simply print out the addition of the result, right? So we'll say param1 plus param2, just like that. And when we run it, notice how we get an error because we're still inputting Bob as our first parameter, and then it's trying to basically add Bob to 324, right? So we have to give it proper arguments. So we'll say something like 24 and -7, for instance. Okay, so now when we run this, it'll give us a very good answer, simply adds our two numbers, and once again, iterates through all of our remaining args arguments. A cool thing about the args parameter is that you really don't have to input anything. So if we copy over this call and try again, simply with only our two required parameters, nothing else, right? The function works just fine. Simply there are no args, so we're not iterating over anything in our step right here. On the other hand, kwargs stands for keyword arguments. It is used for passing advanced data objects like dictionaries to a function because in such functions, one generally does not have a clue about the number of arguments. Hence, data passed is best dealt properly by adding a double asterisk to the passing type, like so. Def my kwarg function, and you have double the asterisk right here. And we'll call it kwargs, but same principle applies as before. It does not have to be called kwargs. However, for best nomenclature purposes, we will keep it as kwargs. And notice here how when I am iterating through it, I am applying similar principles as we have learned in our dictionaries lesson, for which I have to iterate through both the keys and the values, right? Since it is a special kind of input parameter, that's a key value pair. So here we will use a funner type of print statement with percent signs, and we will say %s is equal to %s, and here another percent indicates that we're waiting for our input parameters of the print statement, which will be key and value as such. So what is happening here is we're replacing our first %s with key and our second %s with value, right? So when we actually call our function here and then run our script, we have to use key value pairs. So for instance, we will do something like first is equal to Alluring, and our second is equal to mind. And of course, we can keep adding them, right? So we can call them whatever you like, and we will make this equal to 4, right? So when we call this, we can see exactly what we expect. Each key value pair is printed out nicely using our print format here. So to summarize, args are used when we do not know how many arguments we will want to use when calling the function. And kwargs are the exact same thing, except they're designed to pass key value type arguments that act as a dictionary, right? So they come in pairs. In the real world, kwargs are not utilized too often. Args, on the other hand, are very powerful, and it is strongly recommended that you familiarize yourself with this convention. Fantastic! Now you are able to create functions with a dynamic number of input parameters, including complex key value data type parameters using kwargs. In the next lesson, we will find out how to make your Python programs significantly more valuable with variable user inputs and argparse.